Okay. Hello.
Hello.
You were born March 7th,
Yes.
1916.
Yes.
Yes. And what were you named when you were born?
Helen Elizabeth Rice.
And where were you born?
Kansas City, Missouri.
Do you know what street you were on or anything? Wasn't it Monroe Avenue?
Yes, Monroe Avenue.
In Kansas City. What was it like there? Was it a big city or a small town?
Kansas City is a pretty good sized city, yes.
Okay.
Not as big as St. Louis, though,
It wasn't. Okay.
which is also in Missouri.
Okay. And why did your parents live in that area?
Mother was born in Missouri, in Slater, Missouri, which I've never been able to find on the map. And Dad was born in Chanute, Kansas, which is just over the border in Kansas, very close to Missouri. So they evidently met sometime.
So what was the name of your parents?
Dad's name was Jesse Herbert Rice, and Mother's name was Nina Marie Rice.
What was her maiden name?
Her maiden name was
McKee. McKee?
Hmm?
McKee?
McKee. Thank you.
Okay. So, did your dad work in the area? What did he do?
Well, I was trying to think what he did. I was too busy playing out in the front yard.
Was he a machinist?
Hey, but
A
he was a machinist. He worked for the Missouri Pacific Railroad. And sometimes he would have to go to St. Louis for a few days on business, which was about 200 miles east of Kansas City on the border of the Mississippi River.
Okay. Okay. Do you know why they named you Helen?
They just liked it. But the Elizabeth was from a family name.
And who was that?
Several, at least one great aunt.
Okay. And you had an aunt living next door to you also.
Yes, Mother's sister.
And her name was?
Hortense Eleanor.
McKee. McKee? Well,
McKee. Before she was married, but she married very early. I think she was in her late teens, married and married Uncle Will.
okay. And you called her?
Aunt Horty.
Aunt Horty and Uncle Will lived next door to
Yes.
you. Okay. And you were the eldest of two sisters.
I was the middle one of three sisters.
That's right, I was wrong. Right. And tell me about your sisters.
I didn't know Jean very well. Jean was my older sister, and she was about 4 years older than I was. And she was quite upset when I couldn't always play the right games with her when she wanted to play a game. So we got along fine, but she died when she was 7 years old.
And she died because?
Because of diphtheria, which was going around through the United States then.
Okay. All right. And then you had Eleanor.
Eleanor was my younger sister.
Okay. Do you know why she was named Eleanor?
Because Aunt Horty's name was Hortense Eleanor.
Okay, so she was
They named that for her.
Okay, all right. And then were any grandparents around? Were you close with grandparents?
My grandfather McKee. And I was quite fond of him, and I used to go sit on the steps with him while he smoked his pipe, and I called that going to poke with Grandpa.
Going to poke?
I went to poke with Grandpa.
That's funny. So what was your house like? Did you share a bedroom? Where did you play? That type of thing.
Well, we lived on the first floor and often rented the upper floor usually to a young married couple, one or two of whom I can remember. So they seemed to be mostly young people that we had rented to. But we had a big stairway going upstairs, which I liked to play on.
And did you have your own bedroom, or did you share with...
Oh, no. Shared it with my sister Eleanor.
Okay. Even after Jean was gone, or...
Yes.
Okay. All right. And where did you play besides the stairs? Where else did you play?
I played out in the front yard, mostly. Sometimes in the back. The backyard kind of sloped downward, so it wasn't as easy to play some games there.
What was your favorite game when you were a child? What did you like to play?
We liked to play hide and seek and other games like that, where we had to hide and try to find each other.
Fun. So then they decided to come to California. Why was that?
Dad was working as a machinist, and he was laid off finally, and was quite upset about it, and it was hard for him to get another job. So he had lived in California with his family, and he thought it would be nice if we all moved to California. So we did. We got in a new Chevrolet and started west, crossed the Missouri River into Kansas, and drove through Kansas and Colorado to Denver. And Mother and Dad had friends in Denver, so we stayed there about 4 days. And then Dad got sick. He had the quinsy, I think they called it, something like the flu. So we couldn't keep going. We had to wait till he got better. And I got quite well acquainted with the girl next door and didn't want to leave Kansas City.
You mean Denver? You didn't want to leave Denver?
Yeah, I didn't want to leave Denver.
Yeah.
I wanted to stay and play with her because she used to take me to the drugstore and buy me an ice cream sundae. And it was kind of nice knowing her. So.
But then he got better.
So then we had to go on our journey. We went south to Joplin, Missouri, and we crossed over into Kansas, and then finally down into New Mexico, and then we started west, going west. And we went through Arizona, south of the Grand Canyon, until we got to the Colorado River.
And you remember?
And I remember looking down at it. It was a pretty good sized river. But we got across that and went up. We were in California, and we went to Barstow. And we were to meet my dad's brother there, his older brother, and his daughter there. So we did. And they had their car. So the rest of the way to Alhambra, we rode in his car. We had a lot of luggage, of course, and things, but we had to have them sent from Kansas City later because we couldn't have taken them with us in the car. There wasn't room.
So it was shipped later. What year was that, or how old were you?
That was 1923, and I was 7
All right. And so where did
and a half.
So where did you live when you got to California?
We lived with Dad's brother,
His name was?
Arthur Garland Swain.
His name wasn't Rice?
No, that was Mother's.
No, that was
Arthur Garland must have been Rice.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you live with them?
Arthur Garland Rice. Had to be.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And he had a daughter, Mona. And his wife was named Cora. So she was Aunt Cora, and he was Uncle Art. And then we had the daughter, Mona, who was 7 or 8 years older than I was. So she was in high school and college while high school while we were there. And she went on to go to UCLA, and
It's all right. So how long did you live with your uncle? How long did you live with your uncle and aunt?
just about 6 months.
And then what happened?
And then we moved to Whittier because Dad found a job with the oil fields in Kansas Springs,
Santa
which was
Fe?
right.
Santa Fe Springs.
Santa Fe Springs, which was right next to Whittier. And they had a need for machinists there, so he got a job right away. And we moved there and bought a house in Kansas City.
In Whittier.
I'm getting these mixed.
That's all right.
In Whittier.
Okay, do you remember what street?
In Alhambra.
Oh, you bought a house in Alhambra. No, you were in Alhambra with your uncle.
Let me think.
And then he got a job in Santa Fe Springs. So you said you only lived with your uncle 6 months.
Yeah. You have to cross some of this out. I don't know. Anyway, we lived in
Is that when you lived on Sunset
we
Drive?
moved from Alhambra to Whittier because of Dad's job.
Okay.
And he worked in Santa Fe Springs, which was right next to Whittier.
In the oil fields.
In the oil fields.
As a mechanic.
But he was a machinist. He didn't work as an oil man.
Right. So that was 1924 you came to Whittier?
Yes.
Okay. And then what kind of school did you go to as a child when you got to Whittier?
Well, I had already been to kindergarten and first grade in Kansas City. So I started in second grade at the Bailey School. And then we moved down to the south of Whittier on Sunset Drive, and we were closer to Lydia Jackson School, so I went to third grade at that school. Then I went to the fourth grade at the William Penn School, which is across where the City Hall is now, which was across. They have since torn it down, and there's another building there.
And then, did you stay at that school until when?
1 year. One year was
year.
all.
So
That's
fifth
how.
grade.
That's how high it went. Then, well, I went back to Bailey School, and it was in an old white building on Bailey Street in Uptown Whittier. But we were only there 6 months, and they had built a new Bailey School which faced on Hadley Street. So we all took our books in a big sack. Everyone had a sack, carry their books and papers and things. And we marched over to the new school, which was in the same block as the old one, except it faced north instead of south.
And then, did you stay there then for a while?
I was in 6th grade by then, 5th and 6th grade. And then they moved us to John Muir School, which was still on Hadley Street, down from Bailey about three or 4 blocks. And I went to 7th and 8th grade in John Muir School. And then I went to high school at Whittier High School, which was right next to John Muir School, over on Philadelphia Street, where it is now.
So you started at Whittier High School as a freshman, 9th grade, and then did you finish that year?
I finished that year and got to the middle of my sophomore year, and my folks had to move back to California
To Alhambra.
to live with my dad's brother again in the same house we had lived in before,
Back to Alhambra.
in Alhambra.
Because,
It's crazy.
because
Because Dad didn't have a job. It was the Depression,
that's what I was
and
going
he
to say.
couldn't get work. So we lived over in Alhambra until I was a senior. And then we moved back to Whittier, and I did my senior year at Whittier High School, graduated there.
Can you tell the story about your graduation?
We had a fancy graduation. Just,
No?
no, it was a regular.
Well, you tell the story that you had a rehearsal for your graduation. You were out on the field and you had a rehearsal, and then they announced something.
Yeah, I remember something like that.
What I remember is there was polio, a polio
Yes,
outbreak.
polio. We had that was going through everybody's life. Well, oh dear. Yep. So,
And who is this?
Hmm?
Who's this?
this is my kitty,
And who?
Baby.
Oh, baby.
That's the name they had when it was given to me.
Ah. Well, so you're in high school and it's time to graduate and you're at rehearsal out on the football field, and what did they tell you?
I can't remember that.
They told you that you couldn't have a regular graduation.
Yes.
It was canceled,
It was canceled.
baby.
We had to graduate right out on the field. They called our name and we walked up to a stand up there and they handed us our diploma. And that was our graduation. The rest of the people had all other grades before and after had their graduation in the auditorium at Whittier High School.
But they didn't have it because they were afraid of spreading the polio.
Because of polio.
Yeah. So your parents weren't there or anything?
I don't know. I don't
think so.
remember that
Yeah.
they were, but I think they were probably invited.
Oh, okay. But it was outside instead.
Yes, it was outside.
Okay. So what was your favorite subject in school?
Oh, I like geography and English.
Okay. Do you know, what did you want to be when you grew up? Did you have any dreams of doing something?
No, I didn't really. I kind of wanted to be a secretary because I did like to type. I learned to type. Oh, I went to Woodbury Business College before
That was getting to that.
that was a whole year, a whole year after my graduation.
I was getting to that. I was just going to ask did you go to college?
Yes,
Okay, and you went where?
in Los Angeles, the Woodbury Business College. It's still going. So I would take the bus. We lived on Hadley Street. I would walk down to Whittier Boulevard to catch the bus, which would go along Whittier Boulevard clear to Los Angeles. Because in Los Angeles it became 6th Street. 6th Street. And then we got off at 6th and Main Street and walked about 5 blocks over to the business college, which is on Bailey.
And what courses did you take there?
I took all business courses.
So did you get a job after college?
Yes. Woodbury would send us out on the jobs. And I didn't get the first 2 I went to, but I got the 3rd one. And Woodbury would always, if you lost that job or were out of work, you go back to Woodbury College and they would send you out again when they had openings, which I thought was pretty nice. So I got tired of my first job, which was for a pipe fittings company. I was there about 2 years, I guess, and I decided I wanted to go to work in downtown LA. So I went back to Woodbury College. They sent me out on different jobs, and so I got one. It was right downtown. I can't remember the name of these darn streets.
It's all right. We don't need
It
to
was
know.
close to Broadway, if you know where that is in LA.
Sure.
It was the next street east of there. And we had the whole floor of the 9th floor up there. And it was a 12-story building. So at lunchtime, not everybody, but most of us went up to the roof and to eat our lunch, which we brought from home. So it was a nice roof up there, and we enjoyed that.
I bet. Well, backing up a little bit, you met Ralph Flanders in college, correct?
No,
Oh, see? What do I know? When did you meet Ralph Flanders?
well, there were a bunch of us riding back and forth to LA for our jobs, and there were the rider, and then there was another fella, and there were about 4 or 5 of us in the car, and one of the fellas said this other one wanted a date with me, and we had a date.
So he didn't ask you himself, he had his friend ask you.
Yes, he had to have the friend do it. Does that sound like him?
Yes.
And I forget where we went. I need more time to think about these things.
That's all right. No
I
rush.
can't remember
If I remember correctly, you went out on a date and he had a dog with you, a dog in his pocket. Is that
He had the dog in his pocket. She was about 3 inches long. And I can imagine what his pocket looked like. But she was the cutest thing. And my folks just thought she was just as cute as could be. And they wanted to keep her. They'd been thinking about getting a dog anyway. And I said, would you mind taking care of this dog? And I forget his name.
It's all right.
And they did. And my dad just her name was Princess.
No.
That's the name that Ralph gave her, the fellow I was dating. It was his dog.
Right.
And he had named it Princess.
Okay.
And where he lived, his mother had died, and he lived with his father, who had remarried an old maid school teacher. And she didn't want any pets in the house. So he asked my folks if they would like to have Princess for a pet. And they were tickled to death to have her. And she lived a very happy life there with Mother and Dad.
And he got to see the dog.
On Hadley Street.
How long did you date before you got married?
Must have been about 3 years, almost 3 years.
Mm. Did he have somebody else ask you to marry him?
Did I ask anybody?
No, did he have someone else ask you to marry him?
No.
Just kidding.
No, we just went together all that time. He'd come by every day, every night, and we'd go someplace. He worked in his orchard, which he owned in Santa Fe Springs, about 13 acres. And he would come by my house and pick me up, and we'd eat dinner in the car. He would eat dinner. I would just sit there with him. So that was nearly every night.
Ah. Okay, so what day did you get married?
February 5th, 1939,
Okay. And where did you get married?
at the First Methodist Church.
Okay. And then where did you live after you got
Then
married?
we had bought a house before we got married on Walnut Street, which is 1 block west of that street
Hadley?
that I can't remember.
Painter?
It's in Whittier.
Okay. Painter?
No,
Okay.
it
That's
goes
right.
north and south.
On Hadley. I mean on
No,
Walnut Street.
no.
So did you work after you got married?
No. And I got pregnant about 3 months or two or 3 months after we got married. So I didn't want to go to work then.
At that time, right. And so December of 1939, yeah. Your first child was born
Yes, the
And-
day after Christmas.
the day after Christmas, and who was that?
That was Ronnie.
And why did you name him what you named him?
I don't know, I just liked the name.
It was Ronald Gordon.
Gordon. I don't know where I got Gordon. I'd been reading a book, I think, that had the name Gordon in it. I thought that was kind of a nice name, so it was Ronnie Gordon. Ronald Gordon Flanders.
Okay, good. And then after that, you had a second child.
Yes, Rex, in 1942. In June, the 29th of June, he was born.
Rex Wilbur.
Rex Wilbur.
And where did you
And
come
the
up?
Wilbur was from one of Eleanor's old boyfriends who had lost his life.
Wasn't that her first husband?
Yeah, I think so.
She was married to him,
Yeah.
and he lost his life.
I forget how.
He was in World War II as a jet pilot, and he disappeared.
Yes, he was. He
Was shot down.
He was lost for about 6 months till they found his body.
Right.
So I had told Eleanor that I would name, if it was a boy, I was going to name him for him,
Right.
Wilbur.
Right.
So
That's
had to do it.
right. That's where you got that name.
So that was Rex. Rex, I wanted a short name because Ronald Gordon Flanders was so long.
And then you had a third child.
Yes,
And who was that?
that was Daryl.
Daryl. What's his middle name?
Ray.
Ray. And when was he born?
For Ralph's father was named Ray Flanders. And I said, before he was born, I said, if it's a boy, we'll name his second name Ray. So it was, and I liked Daryl. So I named him Daryl Ray Flanders.
All right. And then you had a fourth child,
Yes,
and this time it was a girl, and you named her Shirley
Shirley Jean. And Ralph said he wanted to pick the name. And he had a sister who died when she was a baby, and her name was Shirley. And he says, I want to name our baby Shirley. I said, that's fine. I'm glad you picked one. And that was fine with me. So her second name was Jean, which was my older sister's name who had died. And I thought, Shirley Jean. So that's what we named her. But she died at about 8 weeks old. She was about 8 weeks old. She was perfectly all right at first. And then she had a thymus gland, which is in the chest. And it just was too big.
Oh, wow.
Was growing. Anyway, that was why she died.
That must have been a tough time. That must have been a really tough time in
It
your
was.
life.
It was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be hard. So then you had a fifth child. Ta-da, ta-da!
Yeah. I wonder how we kept her. No, everything went well with her. It was five years later after
Shirley.
Shirley's, but we had her. We had a girl, and Ralph was tickled pink. He was very happy about it. He was afraid he was going to have another boy.
Another boy. And you named her?
Susan Elizabeth.
And she
Elizabeth was my middle name, and I liked it, and it was a family name, so I liked it. And I liked Susan.
And she was born when? It's a test. What was her birth date?
October 3rd,
What year?
1954.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just checking. Okay. So we bypassed, we went through a lot of years right there. You started with Ron in 1939 and your last child was born in 1954. So there's a lot of life in between all that.
Yeah.
Where were you when World War II started? Do you remember when they announced the war?
We were in our first house. I think for 6 years.
It was
Before-
1942?
And then Ralph
I think.
wanted to build a house on the ranch and live there. So he got busy, and we made a map of how we wanted the house. And he had 13 acres of land there, and we built the house there.
Who built it?
I don't know the company's name.
Oh.
It was a
He didn't build it.
No, he didn't do it himself. No.
Right. And so, well, we got off on that. So when did you move there? Do you know?
What?
When did you move to the ranch in Santa Fe Springs? I think probably after Daryl,
Daryl was a baby.
yeah.
Daryl
maybe
was
1950?
very young. Yeah, I think it was shortly after Daryl was born, and he was born in January of 46. So I think it must have been that same year.
Okay. But so go back to World War II. Do you remember where you were? A lot of people remember where they were when there was something big in history. Do you remember where you were when World War II started?
When it started,
Remember them announcing we're at war or anything like that?
yeah, it was in September. It was the first part of September. I think it was the 3rd of September that it started.
What year?
In 19...
Was it 42? 42? 1942?
It was already on.
Oh,
Must have been
I
41.
don't know my history. Do you remember where you were or anything?
We lived on Walnut Street there in Whittier.
Okay, but you don't remember exactly where you were, what you were doing when...
No.
No? Okay, some people...
Because,
Remember
it
that.
was sort of gradual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you remember where you were when World War II ended?
Well, Daryl had just been born. It was 40... He was born in 46. So it ended in April, I think, 1945.
Okay. So when you had 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 children, what was your day-to-day life like? What were you doing all day?
Can you imagine?
Tell me about it.
Well, when we moved to Walnut Street in Whittier, we had one little room there off the kitchen, just room enough to put my washing machine. We had no room for a dryer, so I was hanging out the wash all the time. I had to hang it out in the line because I couldn't get the dryer in the house. Well, probably couldn't afford it either.
What did Dad do for a living?
Dad was, well, he was working for himself most of the time.
On the ranch?
Yeah, and we had a little income from some insurance that helped.
But he had 13 acres of walnut trees.
Yes,
And he took them all out himself, correct?
yes, he did.
And what did he put in?
He had a helper sometimes. It was deaf and dumb, Mexican.
Okay. And what did he put in instead of the walnut trees?
He planted avocados.
So then he wanted to open up a market.
And he opened up a market. And it gradually got to be pretty big. It was an open market on Telegraph Road and Oranday Road, if you know where that corner is. Just across the bridge, just right next to the San Gabriel River.
Okay.
And that's where his land was. And he had another plot of land down right next to the river, which was down, we had to go down a path anyway to get to it. So he
So he ran the market. He ran the market and
he ran the market, and he sold his other part of the land that was down by the river, and we could use that money too.
Right. And then he sold, and something else came on that property. He opened up what on the corner there? He opened up a gas station.
Yes, he opened up a gas station.
He sold some of the land, or what? Did he own the gas station, or did somebody else lease the property? Do you know?
I wish I could look through some of my books. I
Okay, that's
can't
all right.
place that.
Okay, well, I know he had a gas station. It was Hancock gas station.
Yes.
It was called Flanders Corner.
It was, and it was a Hancock. That was the gasoline he was selling.
Right,
Hancock.
right. But then one day he decided to sell all of it, correct?
Yes, we wanted to move back to Whittier.
Why? Why did you want to move back to Whittier?
Because that was home for us, for both of us.
Okay. So what happened?
Can I look up some of this stuff?
No, we don't have time. So you moved to Whittier. You bought the house on Elden Avenue.
Yeah. I'm mixed up here. I wish I could look
What
up.
are you mixed up with? What are you mixed up with?
It's just hard to remember whether it was first or...
It was what? Whether it was
That
what?
thing looking at me. Isn't that enough for a while?
Well, it's just this is our only chance to do it. So Let me see if I can ask a few more things. Okay. Do you have any favorite sayings or expressions?
No.
Okay. If you could go back to any age of your life, what would it be and why?
I really think when my children were young and I was putting them through school and all of that, I really liked that.
Being mom.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. That makes sense. And if you won $1 million, if today someone came and said you won $1 million, what would you do with the money?
I think I'd give half of it to charity and put the rest in the bank.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have, what's your best piece of advice for living to people? What's your best piece of advice?
I would say do what you really love to do. Don't get stuck in a job that you don't like. If you don't like it, get away from it.
And why is that your advice?
Because you'll be happier.
That's good advice. And what's one thing you most want people to remember about you?
About me? Now that I can't answer. I don't know. I really don't.
Don't have any thoughts on that?
I could think about it. If we do this again another time, I'll have more answers for you. I gotta look it up.
What do you gotta look up?
I've never thought what the answer to that question. I never thought about it.
What you want people to
I
remember?
want to think about it. That's what I want to do.
That's fair enough. I guess I'm just going to go back to one little thing. You moved to the Elden Avenue house. We don't know for sure when, but I believe it was when I was just a baby. So probably 1955. You probably moved into the Elden Avenue house.
Where did you go to
Ocean View in Whittier. I was told that I only lived in the Santa Fe Springs house for about a year, as a baby, and then we moved to the Elden Avenue house.
Okay.
I was just wondering what Dad did for a living then. Few things. He was during the war. He was a motorcycle policeman.
Motorcycle cop.
Yeah, because he didn't go into the war because
He had small children.
right, and so any man that had, I think you said he had one and one on the way.
Yes.
He stayed home, and there weren't that many men
Yeah.
in town,
Yeah.
so he became a motorcycle cop.
Yeah.
And then after that, when all the men came back, then what did he do?
Well, he was working on his ranch all his time.
But you left the ranch, you're in Whittier now, and he became insurance salesman
Yes.
for Farmers Insurance.
He studied. His dad helped him with that till he died, and I forget the name, what year that was. But his dad helped him with big insurance because he did that sort of thing.
Okay. And so then he started working for Farmers Insurance.
Farmers Insurance.
And did that until he was 80 years old, if
Yeah.
I remember correctly. Right?
Right.
And that's what he did when you lived in Elden
Yes,
Avenue.
yes.
Okay. I just wanted to get that in the video. All right.
Yeah.
When Ron and Rex and Daryl were in school, you became involved. You weren't just a mom being at home. You were also helped with the PTA.
Yeah, I was PTA president for 2 years
At what school?
at, now I've forgotten the name of that.
Little Lake?
Little Lake.
Little Lake School, right?
Little Lake School in Santa Fe Springs.
Okay. And you were the president.
I was president for 2 years.
You don't know what years those were, or
Oh, I could look it up.
That's all right. And did you enjoy doing the PTA president?
I enjoyed it, but I was sure happy when I was through.
Was there anything else you did outside of the home when you were raising four
I don't
children?
think I had much time.
No, we did a lot. There was no, you did a lot of ironing because we didn't have the material like we do nowadays where we don't have to iron.
No, I didn't, but I got along all right, I guess. I used to iron on Tuesdays. I remember ironing all day Tuesdays.
You always had a schedule, didn't you? Do you remember your
Kind of.
household schedule? Do you remember that?
Yeah,
What Mondays was, I remember,
wash day.
wash day. And
Well, I still had to hang things out till we moved from that house on
I
Walnut.
remember having a drying thing in Elden too, in the backyard.
Do you?
Where you hung clothes, yes.
But I don't know if you were born then.
I remember. Or maybe I've seen pictures.
Maybe.
Yeah. So there was Monday wash day, Tuesday iron day. What were the other days?
I don't know. Probably PTA meetings.
And other things in the house, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Awful lot of things to do in the house.
All right. Well, we just want to wish you a happy birthday, even
Well,
though we're a
thank
month
you.
early.
But that's not yet.
Almost.
Yes.
And this was filmed on February 6th, 2016.
Hmm.
This was filmed on February 6th, 2016.
Okay.
1 month before your 100th birthday.
Oh, yeah.
Did real well. High five.
She hits hard. No, sure, my knuckles go.
Sorry about that.
Elder abuse.
Elder abuse.
They gotta work if you want me to do any more work in the house.
All right, that's it. Cut. Very good, Mumsy. You did good.
Oh, I don't think so. I would have liked to
She wants to
rehearse myself.
You did good. Here's your glasses.
Oh, thank you.
If you want to sit on the couch, you can look at some of these pictures. And then leave it up there just in case you think of something, okay? For a few minutes.
You might leave those on one end of the couch and let me look at them.
Yeah. Well, I want to take them and make a little thing out of them for your
Oh.
birthday. But you can look at them now if you want to go. I'll bring them back.
Okay. I remember I liked this top and I tried to get it again for the others, but I couldn't find
Yeah,
them.
like burlap.
Isn't Ronnie cute?
Yes, he was a cute kid.
And all the picnics we had, family pictures. Picnics. The Flanders
All the
family.
Flanders family.
There's Lillian. That's me behind her. I'm pregnant. I'm pregnant there.
Ah,
Papa Ray back there.